Yes.
Married a hockey player.
That's
There
right.
you go. I wonder if people are going to start watching this show like they watch Game of Thrones to see how many different beverage containers they can actually see, you know, in different places on the tables and stuff like that.
Product placement?
Not product placement. Those are accidents from Game of Thrones. The very latest is after the Starbucks coffee 2 weeks ago. Now they apparently saw
A water bottle.
a couple of them.
Underneath, hidden under there. If you're the actor, though, wouldn't you, if you put it under there, wouldn't you think, wait a minute, this is going to be in the scene?
Supposed to have that.
No,
Yeah.
I would say the budget's so big on this. I'm sure they got people just looking for continuity issues. I don't have to worry about it. Someone will say to me, you know, put your papers away or straighten your papers up. People say that to me every day, and still I need to be reminded.
But see, you're supposed to have papers in front of you
Right.
because we're a news show.
Right.
Those things are anachronistic because they do not belong in that period
Right,
of
if
time.
you were hiding your Khaleesi dragon underneath your leg,
that would be a problem.
That might be a problem.
And the last
Right.
dragon I had was actually on the Munsters. I kept it under the staircase. Remember that?
Sure. The
Right?
door would
You
open.
remember that? Thank you. Chris Chulo here? Guess
No,
not.
we all remember.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, thank you very much for joining us on this very busy Monday. And we start with this story. President Trump cracking down on illegal immigration. He says changes are already being made despite obstacles thrown in his way.
There's a lot of intensity on this issue, but some key Democrats are signaling they want no part of the president's effort.
And Griff Jenkins is live down in Washington as a 2020 hopeful reveals her own plan. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Ainsley, Brian, and Steve, good morning. Happy Monday. Very interesting turn of events as news broke yesterday that the administration is reversing course on a plan to ship migrants to southern Florida and Buffalo because it wasn't, as acting DHS Secretary McEleenan noted, a, quote, effective use of resources. One of the 2020 hopefuls, Kirsten Gillibrand, was blasting the president's new immigration plan and releasing her own solution, suggesting she simply would not detain migrants at all who are arrested at the border. Listen.
As President of the United States, I wouldn't use the detention system at all. If they're given a lawyer and given a process, they will follow it. They can go into the community.
Meanwhile, President Trump highlighted the progress being made in the overall border battle.
The wall is being built as we speak. We'll have close to 500 miles done by the end of next year. And we're changing laws as rapidly as we can get them through the courts. We're fighting a court system. We're fighting the Democrats. I think there's tremendous pressure on many of the Democrats to get something passed.
This is Carla Provost, chief of the Border Patrol, tweets, we've had over 535,000 arrests so far this year in the southwest border with no sign of it getting better. This number will only get higher. For the safety of those in our custody and our agents, we've had to release 40,000 into the communities as a last resort. The president, by the way, guys, is in a rally in Pennsylvania tonight. We'll find out if we hear more about it.
I got a feeling we will.
Yeah, Griff, so they're not upset that people are coming. They're upset that we're going to put them places? Is this unbelievable? South Florida, Buffalo, why don't we look at the reason why they're coming, why we can't stop them? Does that ever come up?
You know, Brian, it's a very interesting snapshot, a window into just how fluid and overwhelming this problem is, because Border Patrol chiefs across the country who I've been in contact with say they're really at their wits' end trying to find a place to put these people because it's just not realistic, although perhaps Senator Gillibrand would disagree, to just release them all because stats show not all show up for their court dates, putting communities at risk.
These Border Patrol agents are going to start quitting. They are so overwhelmed, it's not going to be worth the money.
Why do they even need to work if her plan passes?
Kristen Gillibrand?
Right.
Yeah.
Then
It's
they don't even
genius.
need to be down there.
She's currently not president.
Right.
So
right.
she would have to.
So let's get
that's kind of
everybody a
my law.
lawyer. Let's take those numbers down from those benches we see at bus stops and give everyone a phone number. So when they come here, give them a lawyer and then send them right to Wisconsin or Georgia or Los Angeles.
And just hope that they show up for court.
Right.
All right.
Thanks, Griff.
Thank you.
All right. Kristen Gillibrand said
Griff is a little exasperated.
a lot going on, a lot of territory to cover. Kristen Gillibrand said she would fund border security measures that are anti-terrorism, anti-human trafficking, anti-drug, and anti-drugs, along with anti-gun, but did not say she would do anything to increase the security on the border to keep people from getting in.
Yeah, Harris Faulkner talked to a U.S. Border Patrol agent, and he was saying, you know how we've heard that 50% of the agents are actually securing the border, and then the other 50% are doing the processing and taking care and changing diapers or feeding the babies, whatever, taking care of the families. This guy said, I think I would challenge that number. I think it's 75% are doing the processing, but they're not actually able to secure the border because they're taking care of so many of these families.
Right.
So much going on down there. All right. Meanwhile, over the weekend in the Green Zone in Baghdad, a Katyusha rocket was launched. Apparently, they feel it was fired by an Iranian-backed Shiite militia group. And after that, the president tweeted essentially that if Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again.
So you can't really take that two ways. Here's more from the president.
I'm not somebody that wants to go into war, because war hurts economies, war kills people, most importantly, by far most importantly.
Right.
But you cannot let Iran have nuclear weapons. Iran's been a problem for so many years. If you go back, just take a look at all of the conflict that they've caused. And the deal that President Obama made was a horror show, the Iran nuclear deal. I ended the Iran nuclear deal. And actually, I must tell you, I had no idea it was going to be as strong as it was. The country is devastated from the standpoint of the economy.
So those are comments that he made with Steve Hilton that were taped last week, ran last night here on the channel.
Yeah, great interview Steve Hilton did. But meanwhile, here's the good news. So what the president wanted to do is stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. He is not convinced, because it sunsets in 10 years, and didn't have any inspectors on site, that this was a good deal. The other thing he knew is that if Iran is able to get Western investment, they're going to use that money not to build up Iran, but to build up Islamic Jihad, Hamas, and Hezbollah. Already, the economic sanctions we're putting on them is denying Hezbollah what they expect. And that's $700 million worth of financing. Because of that, they're cutting back their terror and their militias in Syria. Because of that, they're losing some influence in Lebanon. Because of that, they can't continue to incite violence in Gaza. So this is what they're doing. The president's denying them funds to finance their network of terror and allowing them to stand themselves up.
And the president says that Iran is now retaliating. He said if Joe Biden wins or one of the Democrats win, that they would re-enter the Iran deal.
Also, keep in mind, it was just in the last week or so that these Iranian-backed rebels attacked a couple of Saudi tankers and apparently a drone strike as well on part of their infrastructure. And the country of Saudi Arabia said that a Saudi diplomat said his country doesn't want to go to war but will defend themselves. As well, you can understand that.
And on Tuesday, the rest of Congress, those willing, will be briefed on what exactly the threat was coming from Iran that caused the president, his advisor, as well as Secretary of State to evacuate everyone from Iraq that was non-essential and move us out of harm's way, while giving an alert to just about all American assets in the region.
In other news, lots of people had prom this weekend.
This is good news.
College graduations, yes, and Morehouse College, which is a historically black college in Atlanta, all men, all boys. They had a commencement speaker who is a billionaire. He actually went to Cornell and has donated a lot of money to that university, but he stands up and he says, you know what, I have a surprise for you all. And look at the cheers. He said, I am going to forgive all of your college debts. I'm going to pay it all off for you.
So it's a commitment of $40 million. Here's how it sounded and caught everybody by surprise.
On behalf of the 8 generations of my family who have been in this country, we're going to put a little fuel in your bus. This is my class, 2019. And my family is making a grant to eliminate their student loans. Now, I know my class will make sure they pay this forward. And I want my class to look at these alumnus, these beautiful Morehouse brothers, and let's make sure every class has the same opportunity going forward. So class of 2019, may the sun always shine upon you. May the wind always be at your back. And may God always hold you in the cradle of her hands. Congratulations.
And he did not make the announcement right at the beginning or right at the end. He just kind of worked it in the middle. He was talking about the bus because he was talking about how when he was growing up in Denver, he was bused on bus number 13 over to Carson Elementary. And being in a better school opened his eyes. That's why he did that. There was and you could hear some chanting MVP, MVP. One of the people in attendance said that he either stands for most valuable player or most valuable philanthropist, which he certainly was.
Worth $40 million. That's how much it's going to cost.
Up to.
So here's an example. This guy, James Allen Grant, was exhausted. He said, I'm listening to speeches since 6 in the morning. He's 22 years old. But then all of a sudden, when they made this announcement, he looked at his dad, who's a banking examiner, who's going to work for another 10 years to pay off his $45,000 in debt. All of a sudden, his dad says, I basically retire because of what that gentleman just did, Mr. Smith just did.
How would you feel, though, if you'd already paid it, or your parents had already paid it? They'd be like, shoot,
I know.
shouldn't have paid it.
Well, that's it. That's losing the spirit of it, Ainsley. But I'm just saying, you could be practical on it. He just set up grants for it. I think it's great. He also said one of the keys to his success in life was the fact that when he was in Denver, they bused him to a predominantly white school. Carson School. And this was where he met the best teachers, most inspirational people, along with having 2 parents with PhDs.
Yeah, that's the school choice. It's so important. How wonderful is that? I thought that is so. I wanted to learn more about him. He's the CEO of Vista Equity Partners. They invest in software and technology companies. His net worth is $5 billion, according to some articles. And he gave $50 million to his alma mater, to Cornell.
His final bit of advice: whenever it takes.
School choice. It's so important. How wonderful is that? I thought that is so. I wanted to learn more about him. He's the CEO of Vista Equity Partners. They invest in software and technology companies. His net worth is $5 billion, according to some articles. And he gave $50 million to his alma mater, to Cornell.
His final bit of advice: whenever it takes, never ever forget to call your mother, and I do mean call. Don't text.
Yeah. Right. One mom in the audience, she said, "This is Mother's Day all over again."
Right.
I read one person owed $70,000.
All the lives that guy changed.
I know.
Congratulations.
Hey, we used to text our tosses to Jillian, but now I have to verbally do it now because I've been inspired.
No, call.
Right.
Call.
She's not your mommy, Brian. Okay.
I will call you. Hey, Jillian.
Good morning. We do have some serious news to get to, so let's start with this Fox News alert. And a massive manhunt is underway right now after a shootout leaves 1 officer dead and 2 others hurt in Alabama. Police say Grady Wilkes opened fire as they responded to a domestic disturbance call at a trailer park in Auburn. He was last seen wearing body armor and is considered armed and dangerous. The Auburn officer is the 18th shot and killed in the line of duty this year. Another Fox News alert now. A Swedish prosecutor requests to detain WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange over a 2010 rape allegation. Assange was evicted from the Ecuadorian embassy last month, where he'd been hiding since 2012. He's now serving a 50-week sentence in the UK for skipping bail. If granted, the warrant would be the first step to have Assange extradited. He also faces extradition to the U.S. for allegedly conspiring to hack a Pentagon computer. White House hopeful Pete Buttigieg takes a veiled swipe at President Trump, accusing him of engaging in impeachable conduct. This as the Indiana mayor says he stands alone in the field of 2020 candidates in a Fox News town hall.
Look, there's a lot of us running for president on the Democratic side, but I think it's safe to say I'm not like the others. There's a special value to generational change at a moment like this.
Mayor Pete also calling for 4 new tax hikes aimed at lowering the national debt. Let's look at your headlines. I will send it back to you.
It was a great town hall.
Yeah, he seemed to have loaded up with all his fans. It was like a rally.
Thanks, Jillian.
Hey, you're a Democrat if you're against immigrants, if you're against abortion, if you're against gay marriage and LGBTQ rights. I'm not sure what it means to be a Democrat if all of those things are true. And I understand that the D-Trip is, often going to try to protect the incumbent, but I do think we have to look at all of these issues and think about what it means to be a Democrat.
As the battle over regulating abortion continues, progressives like the Congresswoman you just heard from, Pramila Jayapal from the state of Washington, appear to be pushing to rid the Democratic Party of pro-lifers ahead of the 2020 elections. Here to weigh in is the executive director for Democrats for Life of America, Kristen Day. Hey, Kristen, good to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on
You're
this morning.
welcome. So you are a pro-life Democrat, and you just heard her say that you can't say you're a Democrat if you are against abortion. What's your reaction?
She is completely wrong in trying to redefine what it means to be a Democrat. Democrats historically have tried to protect the underdog, those who need assistance, the vulnerable. And again, we hear this over and over again, but who is more vulnerable than an infant in the womb? And it is that baby is so worthy of protection and protection of the Democratic Party. And she's absolutely wrong on that front.
We've heard so many people talking about this issue as of late because of new laws that were trying to be pushed by certain lawmakers saying that you could have an abortion even after the baby's born, after you've carried all the way through. But if you look at a poll, a Marist poll from January, it says most people agree that abortion should be limited to the first 3 months. Democrats, 60% of Democrats agree to that, 92% of Republicans, and 78% of independents. So is she completely wrong? Does she not understand her own party?
No, she does not. And I think there's a small minority of Democrats who are really vocal and really pushing the party to take this abortion extremism position. And it's really out of touch. And the time is now for pro-life Democrats to start standing up and saying, no, enough. You know, there are 21 million pro-life Democrats out there, and a lot of them are afraid to speak up. I've heard from pro-life legislators that they have their constituents come up to them and say, you know, they whisper, I'm a pro-life Democrat too. But, you know, they won't be vocal about it.
They have to whisper it.
And, you know, the time is now. The party is just going in the absolute wrong direction. And it's, you know, we may have won the House back in Congress, but there are seats all around the country that are in jeopardy because of this abortion extremism. If you look at the South, it's mostly Republican in the South.
You're right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
Okay, you're welcome. Remember the Starbucks Cup Game of Thrones fans were talking about for weeks? Well, guess what? Another drink made its way on the big screen during last night's finale. We're going to show it to you coming up next.
All right, glad you're up. I hope you're dressed. Some quick headlines now. The U.S. sending China a firm message as tensions between the two nations intensify. First, over trade talks. The U.S. has Preble sent into the South China Sea challenging Chinese claims on the international waters. It comes after China imposed retaliatory tariff hikes on $60 billion worth of American goods. Not sure those two are linked. Not sure they're not. And hundreds of illegal immigrants swarm a Paris airport to call for an end for deportations. The protesters chanting, get this, France does not belong to the French. Everyone has a right to be here. Really, isn't that nice? They're also demanding to meet with the French Prime Minister. What a mess over there. Steve.
All right, Brian, thank you. A former Bernie Sanders staffer filing a lawsuit this past week accusing the pro-Bernie organization called Our Revolution of racial discrimination after she was fired. She claimed she was personally attacked for raising concerns about issues affecting African Americans and the group's exclusion of African American issues from its agenda. Here to explain her side of the story that you have not heard is former consultant and director of strategic outreach for Our Revolution, Teslyn Figueroa. Teslyn, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So you filed this lawsuit last week. Tell us the story.
Well, you know, I first want to say I was the former racial justice director for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 campaign. If I did not stand up and continue to take cover for Senator Sanders, then I would not have ever been about racial justice in the beginning. My concern is every time, and it's turned my stomach for the last year, every time they get up and say, you know, Senator Sanders chained himself to a black woman in the 60s. Senator Sanders marched with Martin Luther King in the 60s. I really want to know, Senator Sanders, will you stand with me, this black woman, in 2019? Will you march with me, this black woman, in 2019? For 3 years, there has been consistent concerns. My colleagues have come forward, not just me, in print in the New York Times about issues of racism within the Bernie Sanders movement. The public has talked about it. Even as recently as last night, people were concerned that no black people were in the audience in Birmingham, Alabama, with a population of over 71% black. This has been an ongoing issue with Vermont leaders, black leaders who have said that Senator Sanders have ignored him. Unfortunately, there has been cover for Senator Sanders. I'm not saying that he himself is racist, but his movement is. It is a reason why no one from the 2016 Black Outreach Department is no longer there working for Senator Sanders. And justice has to be taken into account. It's one thing to talk about it in an article, but it was important to me to file a federal lawsuit to talk about the outreach efforts, to talk about how board members said point blank, straight up, right, why am I placing so many issues? So many events in black neighborhoods.
So that is why you filed the lawsuit, to set the record straight so that people understand that you saw problems inside the Bernie Sanders campaign. But Teslin, you know, when you were let go, here's one of the headlines, BuzzFeed News: an Our Revolution staffer fired for anti-immigrant remarks is suing pro-Bernie group for racial discrimination. This is the BuzzFeed story that ran this past week. You know, that sounds like you were fired for anti-immigrant remarks.
That's correct. It was a lie. Politico did an article with that headline that was infused by Lucy Flores, who happens to be the same one that attacked Joe Biden. Went to Politico, said that it was anti-immigrant remarks. They were aware of comments that I had made that were pushing for black people, for concerns of black people who were locked up in prison during that immigrant conversation. And Politico never called me for my comment. They ran with the piece, wrote 3 different pieces saying that I was an anti-immigrant, tried to say, well, of course she's on Fox News, so it must be true, and never once looked at my record, my over 20 years of fighting for black issues. What I said was all of the issues are being talked about with immigration, yet no one is talking about the fact that black men are in prison more than those who were enslaved in 1850. That was my comment, and they considered that anti-immigrant, but that was not why I was fired. It was because of black outreach.
Okay, thank you for setting the record straight. We should point out we reached out to both Our Revolution, the group that you work for, and the Sanders campaign for statements. We have not yet heard back from them. Teslin, is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Senator Sanders, I would like for you to meet with my former colleagues as we asked you to in February of this year. I would like for you to actually respond, pick up the phone, and meet with us just like you met with the Latino Outreach Department. Show us that black lives really do matter instead of just in a stump speech.
All right, Teslin Figueroa, thank you very much for joining us live.
Thank you.
All right. All right, 6:28 now here in New York City. A Republican breaks rank, accusing the president of impeachable conduct. Dan Bongino calls the congressman a
Is he there? And we like it funky.
We like it funky. That's what he's saying. We like it loud. We like it funky.
What is funky?
I think of like Funky Town. You know that song?
Right, but like
so,
still,
yeah, I don't know.
You can't use a definition in the sentence. Like, how do you define funky?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Right?
A lot of fun.
I guess it's in the eye of the beholder.
It could be.
Whatever you think funky is, it is. Am I right, Dan Bongino?
Yeah, it's like Beto O'Rourke running for president. Whatever you think he is, he is. You think he's a liberal, he's a liberal.
Absolutely.
Right?
It all goes back to 2020.
Every time, buddy, every time.
All right, so let's talk about Justin Amash. He's the libertarian/Republican who decided that the president actually did obstruct justice, and he's the first Republican to break and give the hope for impeachment to Democrats everywhere. What's your response?
Justin Amash should leave the Republican Party immediately, stat, ASAP. And listen, that gives me absolutely no joy in saying that. Matter of fact, it brings me misery, and I'll tell you why. I have been a vocal supporter of Congressman Amash for a very long time. I come from the libertarian wing of the party myself. I've been out there on radio hosting. I may have said it on this station before. I thought he was one of the more principled guys in Congress. It turns out he's the biggest phony up there right now. Either he doesn't understand the case, the totality of the case at all, or he's doing something to get his name in the media. Why? I don't know. Does he have bigger aspirations other than being a congressman? But there's absolutely nothing libertarian about claiming that an innocent man, President Trump, who did nothing wrong in this case, should be impeached and thrown out of office for fictitious crimes that didn't happen. It's outrageous he would even claim that.
Dan, the president did tweet about it. He said, never a fan of Justin Amash, a total lightweight who opposes me and some of our great Republican ideas and policies just for the sake of getting his name out there through controversy. If he actually read the Bias-Mueller report, composed by 18 angry Dems who hate Trump, he would see that it was nevertheless strong on no collusion and ultimately no obstruction. Anyway, how do you obstruct when there is no crime and in fact the crimes were committed by the other side? Justin is a loser who sadly plays right into our opponent's hands. Justin was tweeting over the weekend. He said, President engaged in impeachable conduct. He said Bill Barr deliberately misrepresented Mueller. Why do you think he's doing this if he's a Republican?
I don't know. Maybe he has some bigger aspirations and he wants to run against the president. Maybe he wants to be a senator. Obviously, it's some kind of media grabbing kind of headline.
On
I don't know. I can't figure it out. But what's libertarian about? You're supposed to support liberties, big R, God-given rights, and the Bill of Rights. When Donald Trump and his team, we absolutely know they were spied on. We know their Fourth Amendment rights. We know their rights were thrown out the window and trashed. And you're a libertarian supporting further potential criminal action down the line against the President of the United States? It doesn't make any sense. Is he unaware of this case, that a crime was fabricated out of thin air, out of weaponized police state assets that went after the President and his team? I mean, did he miss that whole story? And on this obstruction thing, it's absurd. The president told Jim Comey in Jim Comey's own notes to investigate people who were his satellites if he thought they did something wrong. And the deputy director of the FBI admitted up on Capitol Hill there was, quote, no effort to obstruct his investigation. What is Amash talking about? I mean, did he miss this entire case and just jump in at the end and send out a random tweet in the weekend because he was bored? I mean, it's really pathetic.
Well, and Dan, the Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, has made it very clear. He said spying did occur, and now they're investigating the investigators, and the Inspector General report's going to come out, so maybe we'll have some clarity there. Meanwhile, let's go ahead. We're going to go in the Wayback Machine to 1994 when Joe Biden, the senator from the great state of Delaware, he was in the Senate. He was one of the sponsors of the crime bill, which these days he's trying to explain away why he supported it. Well, Bobby Rush, a Democrat from Chicago, we've latched onto some tape back a couple of years ago where he says that this crime bill was the worst thing to happen to the black community in 50 years. Listen to this.
I am ashamed of my vote. That was the worst vote, as I look back over the years, that I've taken since I've been in the Congress. Crack cocaine and the crime bill were the two worst issues, problems, catastrophes that the black community has suffered through in the last 50 years. I absolutely apologize for voting for that bill. We have not accomplished anything other than further destruction of our communities.
Dan, when Joe Biden was told about Rush's comments and asked if he was ashamed of the bill, he did not waver. What do you think?
Yeah, this is interesting because Biden's going to have to, during the primary season we're in now for the Democrats, he's going to have to run away from old Joe Biden and latch himself to new Obama Joe Biden as his vice president, right? Because some of his older votes were more from the moderate wing of the Democrat Party. And Steve, that's not where the Democrats are right now. Right. The energy is with the Bernie Sanders socialist types, right? Now, after the primary, if he gets out of it and wins, he's going to have to go back to old Joe Biden and exit the Obama-Biden vice president character because the Obama record was awful on the economy, Obamacare and everything else. So he's got an interesting dilemma right now, but this is definitely not where the Democrats are. The energy is with the AOC, Bernie types and the socialists.
Here's the only thing different, and we had a run, but the only thing different is he's still got this huge lead. So if the Democrats are way to the left, why does he have a 20-point lead?
It's name ID only, Brian. Remember, on a primary, everybody's a Democrat. There's no other distinguishing characteristics other than your name. People see a name, that's who they go for. That's going to change as the debates start. Polls mean nothing right now.
All right.
Okay.
Dan Bongino, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today from Palm City down in Florida.
Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Jillian has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning. And let's start with this story. A young athlete collapses and dies while running a marathon. Officials say Taylor Sipo was a quarter-mile away from the finish line when the 22-year-old suddenly fell to the ground. Sipo recently graduated Walsh University, where she played soccer. No word on what caused her death. Protests growing in Alabama over the state's new abortion law. Hundreds marching to the state capitol building in Montgomery to slam the ban. Governor Kay Ivey signed the law making abortion a felony last week. Several groups have vowed to sue to stop it from taking effect. Nationwide protests are planned for tomorrow. A little girl is found safe thanks to church-going heroes. Police finding 8-year-old Salem Sabatka at a hotel outside Fort Worth, Texas, hours after she was abducted on a walk with her mother. Doorbell video shows the mom thrown from a car trying to save Salem. Police say Good Samaritans took it upon themselves to search for the suspect's car and called 911 when they spotted it. Michael Webb is charged with kidnapping. Game of Thrones is over. And a lot of people just cannot handle it.
She doesn't want Dany to be queen.
She doesn't get to choose.
No. But you do. And you have to choose now.
So the website Bark.com is actually offering counseling sessions to help fans move on from the series finale, which did not go off without a hitch, by the way. Plastic water bottles spotted twice last night. You can see this one behind an actor's leg, and the gaffe coming 2 weeks after the fans, of course, spotted a coffee cup accidentally left on set. My goodness, how will we survive?
They didn't have Starbucks or plastic water bottles back then?
No, by the way, why is it so dark?
I don't know. I've never seen even a minute of it. I'm not one of those.
Joe,
so
do you know why it's so dark?
I think that's just what they're going
It's a very dark show.
Yeah,
It's like medieval.
So. Everyone has a dimmer.
A lot of people are talking about it. Last night, Mayor Pete was talking about how he was going to try to watch the finale last night.
You know what? You know who's doesn't know anything about darkness? She knows about Mostly Sunny. Janet Dean.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Brian.
That's the name of your book.
I know, it's incredible.
Are you a Game of Thrones?
You're just the best.
Did you watch?
Do I watch Game of Thrones? Yeah. No, I don't, but my husband does. And he actually adjusts the television set to compensate for the darkness.
Really?
Yeah. But I will say that I'm very glad it's over. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's take a look at the weather.
Now you get your husband back.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's take a look at the maps because I want to show you we have the threat for severe storms today. So we have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for parts of New Mexico in towards Texas and Oklahoma. My friends, we are going to see a severe weather outbreak today across portions of Texas, Oklahoma, up towards Kansas. They have issued a rare high-risk area today, and that means all of the conditions are favorable for tornadoes, long-track, potentially damaging and deadly tornadoes. So that's the area you're going to be watching. And look at New York City, mostly sunny today, EF4s, even EF5s, and this is the anniversary of the Moore, Oklahoma tornado 6 years ago. Cost a lot of lives and a lot of damage. So people need to be on alert, and we will certainly keep you posted throughout the day on Fox News Channel. Back inside.
Keep an eye on the sky out in the central states. All right, JD, thank you. Meanwhile, 2020 hopeful Pete Buttigieg clarifying his comments after going after our founding fathers.
We're thinking twice about naming our events after Jefferson and Jackson. Maybe we should name it for a person who's living. Maybe we should name it after a person of color. I don't know.
What a clown. Should we really be trying to erase our country's history?
I know you traveled on Air Force One, and Rod Rosenstein was on board. You had apparently a 45-minute conversation with him. I think you were going down to Orlando for the police chiefs conference. Apparently, a number of Republican congressmen had wanted to have him on Capitol Hill today. They wanted him to be under oath, and he was reluctant to do that, reportedly. He would have preferred an informal meeting with perhaps just one or two members, not a whole hearing. But apparently, we just had Greg Jarrett on, and he said that he probably didn't want to show up because he didn't want to be under oath. The rumor is the day after the midterms, you're going to fire him and you're going to fire the Attorney General.
Well, I actually get along well with Rod. We have a witch hunt going on, which is disgraceful. And I have to tell you, I'll take these Republican guys with Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and Gates and Gibbs and all of them. I hate to mention a few names because there's so many of them, and I want to give every one of them credit. These are tough, smart guys. They know there was no collusion, it turned out, with Russia. There was collusion, but it was with Hillary Clinton, the DNC. I mean, why didn't, as an example, the FBI take the DNC server? They didn't take it.
Those are all good questions.
They know where it is. I mean, there's so many questions. But one thing I'll say, these Republican folks, I think they're becoming folk heroes. These are great, great people, and they want to get to the bottom of it. And
Right, but Mr. President, the people in your administration, Rod Rosenstein, will not show up on Capitol Hill to
I was surprised
Congress.
at that. Actually, I was surprised at that. I would think he would. He mentioned certain things to me that are very positive about that event, and I would imagine that you'd want to put that down. And frankly, whether you were under oath or not shouldn't matter.
Right.
But he mentioned things to me that I would think would be fine for him to testify. And so, when Congress calls. So I'm a little surprised that Rod wouldn't do it, have a good relationship with Rod, because we work on a lot of other things.
I heard you're bonded by one thing, your distrust of Andy McCabe, and you believe,
Andy
is that
McCabe's
true?
a bad guy, and Comey is a bad guy. Don't forget, Comey's a very bad guy. This country got very lucky when I fired him. And as you know, Rod wrote a big memo about how horrible, you read that memo, how horrible Comey is, and he was a horrible guy. And he lied and he leaked. He lied before Congress, but he was leaking all over the place, not only through his professor, his professor friend who took his stuff and leaked whatever he wanted to do. Comey was a bad guy, but McCabe, very bad, but he worked for Comey. Remember one thing about McCabe. His wife was running for office, and he got $750,000 from Hillary Clinton's, essentially, PAC. It was run by Terry McAuliffe, who is absolutely Hillary Clinton's best friend, and Bill Clinton. They gave him $750,000 for his wife. Nobody even knows if she spent the money. She might not have spent the money. And this was at the time that she was being investigated by McCabe. So McCabe is investigating Hillary Clinton, and her PAC, essentially, run by her best friend, is paying McCabe $750,000. To me, that's a big deal. Nobody ever mentions it. It's really, look, we've got a hornet's nest. I think I've done a great service to this country because I've exposed so much. When you look at the emails between the two lovers, Strzok and Lisa Page, and you say the insurance policy, where they're so wanting to win against Trump, but then in a moment of silence, they said, well, if that doesn't work out, we have an insurance policy. Well, the insurance policy is what has gone on for the last fairly long period of time. There was tremendous corruption, and I'll tell you what, these people want to get to the bottom of it, and I don't think people like Devin Nunes, he should get, if this all turns out like everyone thinks it will, Devin Nunes should get the Medal of Honor. He is really, what he's gone through and his bravery, he should get a very important medal. Maybe we'll call it the Medal of Freedom because we actually give them. They're high awards for civilians, and he's done amazing. And, guys like Meadows and Jim Jordan, all of these people, what they go through, and they're right, and they can't understand why they're being stymied at so many different levels. But now it's coming out, and it's really sad. I did a great service for this country when I fired Comey. He was a bad guy with bad intentions, and you look at the way he handled. And the one thing, just to finish up in that, the Democrats hated Comey more than any human being. He actually did Hillary Clinton a big favor because she should be in jail, but they should have taken her right off the campaign. But so he did her a big favor. But the Democrats hated Comey, hated him. And I said the one thing is, when I fired him, I said I was going to get bipartisan support. And you look at Schumer and all those people, they put out horrible statements about Comey. He should be fired. Right. He's a disgrace. The minute he was fired, they came out and they said he was a wonderful man. I said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Take a look at what they said the day after he was fired. It was like from a different planet. So, look, they're politicians. What can I tell you?
I'm glad you brought up firings because your wife recently had an interview and she said there are people in the White House that she doesn't trust, people you don't trust. You have to watch your back. Is that true, A? And B, if that's the case, why are they still in the administration?
Well, I think it was more true, but you have to understand, I was in Washington probably 17 times in my life. I came to Washington on the 18th time, and I said, darling, can you believe it? I'm president. I didn't know people in Washington, and now I know everybody. I know some that I wish I didn't know, but I know a lot of people. And I think now we're really, you look, Nikki Haley, as an example, did a great job. Really great job, but she's going to be replaced by somebody that's fantastic. I know, and we have 5 people. We really have 7, but
can you tell us the 5? Can you tell us the 5 names?
I can only tell you that they're really outstanding.